Alright, so we have Windows 11. This is like the Home Edition, but it should work on Windows 11 Pro as well. And I haven't tested in Windows 10. So we're going to try and install MavSDK, build the library using Visual Studio Community, and then we're just going to run we're going to build a basic application, example application, MavLink forwarding, which just forwards from one UDP port to another. It's like one of the most basic example applications you can do. So here I am at the MavSDK main site, and so we're going to be obviously using C++. We're going to go to Guide, and then Building on Windows. So there's several dependencies. You do have to install Visual Studio 2022 Community Edition. They have a link there. You do want to check the option for Visual C++ build tools. Let me see if I can pull up the installer and show you, because we can see like what's installed, or should be able to see what's installed. That just shows the updates. Let's see. Oh, if we go to modify, we can probably maybe, yeah, modify. Not a Windows developer. I usually develop on Linux, so I'm not really comfortable in Visual Studio. I usually run like a NeoVim with a bunch of plugins called Astro and Vim. So this is not my thing. This isn't where I usually develop, but I decided to give it a shot because I needed to do it anyway. So desktop development with C++ I think has the build tools for Visual C++, which is the MSVC. So we got that. You do have to install CMake. I think they have an MSI. This easiest way to install on Windows. Just download the MSI. Don't bother with the zip. And then Git, pretty self-explanatory. They have an executable. Let me see, what does this download as? Yep, they just have a direct executable. So you install that, and then there is an option to install Strawberry Pearl. I would recommend it. They also have an MSI for Windows. I think you can look at your version, 64-bit. Here we go. There's like an MSI installer. So yeah, usually this is only needed if you're using specific plugins, and you're not building the MavSDK server, so you're not trying to run like the MavSDK Python wrapper where you will need that MavSDK server running in the background. So basically, Perl is required for OpenSSL unless you build without curl and with the MavSDK server build off, which is what we're doing, just for time's sake, because it does take a while to build up an SSL. And this is a pretty new laptop. It's only a year old. I think it's like over 14 cores. So you can download it. It's not going to hurt anything. We're not going to be building with it though. Then JOM, I haven't installed that. I'm not even sure what it does. So we're going to just, by the numbers, just go through this. So I have a folder already that I like to work in. And then, assuming you have Git, so that works. You're going to clone it into your workspace. And then we want to do the Git submodule update. Alright, so we got that. So that's good. We're going to, I'm actually not going to use Ninja to build. I like using what the CI workflow uses. So I'll show you the commands for that as well. So usually you would do like open open a local folder. I already have kind of this set up already. And then I go into, let's see, should populate. And we're going to be running, yeah, this MavLink forwarding example. So ignore this output, it's just checking the CMake list. So we're in here. So we have no binaries built, nothing is built, it's a clean repo. I'm going to check out the 3.5.0 because we're on master right now, or we're on main. So I'm going to check. Okay, so good. We're on tag 3.5.0. That's good. Now let me open my little cheat sheet for commands. And then, so right away, so let's explain this. Oh, I do use Ninja. Never mind. So yeah, I am using Ninja. And then, so yeah, the build type, there's release, debug, and then release with debug info. I just do the release with debug info. That's what the CI workflow does. The install prefix is kind of like where everything, like the dependencies, the libraries are installed. We're building without curl because it takes a while to build OpenSSL. And then we're building the MavSDK server off. I think it saves you a little bit of time as well. This is important. We're going to build without the shared libraries. I know Julian Oez was the maintainer of MavSDK, and he's done a lot of good work to get you to build with the DLL. But it depends. I mean, you can get it to work, I think, but I haven't tried it. So we're going to build just the static library, and then just warnings reported as errors on. And then this is basically configuring the build, right? So we're going to do that. We're going to configure the build. And so the output of this, we should have like a build folder, and then we also should have an install folder. That's where all the binaries are going to go, all the libraries. And it should hopefully define all the dependencies. This is Julian, again, did a lot of good work upstream to fix the dependency issues with Windows, because it had CMake was kind of just not finding any dependencies. So he did a lot of work to fix that. And that's all in v3.5.0. So if you check out that tag, you should be good. You can try main, but at your own risk, obviously. It's not really a stable release. So this is just going to configure the build. It's also just creating the directories for the dependencies. And you may, depending on your system, the build might take a while. It's pretty short build time if you have a beefy system. And I will say, if you have the option of doing Linux development, I would take that option. I would definitely shoot for Linux natively. You could try dev containers. I've never got the ports to work correctly. And then WSL2 on certain Windows versions, there's a network address translation, and that is the biggest roadblock for me if you're trying to. So you have, say you have like Mav proxy or some other like MavLink router you're running on your system, Windows, and you're trying to feed the data into WSL or WSL2, and then you want to do something with that data and then spit it back out to the autopilot, right? So the autopilot, it's being forwarded to it from the like maybe a serial or USB to a UDP port on your off board or your desktop. That data, you want to do something with it, and then spit it back out, or wrap it in something else in another MavLink message, or use that to send other MavLink data. The network address translation mucks with the ports, so you won't be able to actually like push the data out on the right port that you're expecting it on Windows natively. So WSL2 does that NAT, and it does dynamically change the ports going outbound. So your autopilot will never get anything back. Basically, you can receive, but you won't be able to get anything back out, right? Well, it is still useful, right? If you're just trying to serialize the data into something else or to another system. All right, so now we're actually going to build, and then we're targeting that install folder, release with debug info. So let's do that. This hopefully is painless. So that's why it kind of led me down the path of, well, let's figure out the Windows development side. And so Julian was very helpful in troubleshooting that, and then getting the fixes upstream to be able to do this at a minimum, right? And then so some of the applications might require OpenSSL, but today we won't get into that because the build will be here for 20 or 30 minutes just waiting on OpenSSL and all those dependencies to build. Alright, so that's installing it into that target folder that we had install. So if we open this guy up, if this built right and you don't have any errors, you should have like this MavSDK lib. Let me see what else. MavLink. Yeah, you should have the lib. You should have these CMake files. And then let's go to the build folder. Build. Okay, yeah, there's a lib in there as well. So you should have, yeah, the artifact should be in build and install. And then we're going to try building the app. We don't have an autopilot connected, but I mean, as long as the executable runs, I think we'll be fine. So we're going to hit that guy, and then we're going to use Ninja again. Let's see, developer shell. I usually just have a PowerShell open, and then let's try this guy. Alright, so that built, found all the dependencies, and then just CMake -- build. Great. Alright, so we're gonna run the executable MavLink forwarding.exe. So yeah, we see our MavLink version. It's just blindly forwarding on ports. So obviously, if you're running your application, you do want to test end to end. It's not going to be able to forward anything because I don't have any autopilot connected. But that's pretty much it. Hopefully that helps on the Windows developer side of things. Like I said, I usually develop in Linux, where it is much easier to set up an environment and build your MavSDK applications in Linux. But I can see the use case, especially if WSL, you're having issues with outbound ports, and then dev containers, you just don't want to get into that mess of opening or forwarding ports, and then building the containers obviously is time consuming. So this is kind of the easiest workflow once you get everything configured and built right. And so that's it. And thanks to Julian Oez for getting this working upstream. Kudos to him.